Welcome to Hatman Strikes Back Daily Boxing News. So the second fight on this crazy Riyadh season card on February 22nd, according to the running order on the poster here, will be Zhilei Zhang versus Agit Kabayel for the WBC interim world heavyweight title. Now we know why Zhang and Kabayel both pulled out of the purse bid for the Martin Bakole fight. It had nothing to do with Bakole asking for too much money. That was a load of rubbish concocted by, I suspect, the people who put this Zhang-Kabayel fight together. And before I get into my analysis of the fight, I just want to show you something here with the heavyweight rankings. There hasn't been a WBC mandatory challenger for nearly 3 years. 3 years. That is ridiculous. The last one was Dillian Whyte. The WBC ordered a final eliminator between Deontay Wilder and Andy Ruiz. But when the two sides didn't come to terms after a month of negotiating, the WBC didn't order a purse bid, which of course allowed Tyson Fury, who was still WBC champion at the time, to only have one fight that year, which was against an MMA fighter in Francis Ngannou, which was an absolutely shocking state of affairs. I mean, Wilder should never have been called up for a final eliminator anyway. They should have had Ruiz fight somebody else who was in better form than Wilder, but in any event, the WBC are up to their old tricks again here. Look at the rankings. Usyk's champion, of course, with the WBC. Tyson Fury's #1 contender, but those two are rematching. The next highest ranked available contender is Agit Kabayel, but the guy below him is Martin Bakole. It should be Martin Bakole fighting Agit Kabayel for the WBC interim title. In fact, it shouldn't even be for the interim title. It should be a final eliminator. Winner becomes mandatory. Either way, Zhilei Zhang shouldn't be the one fighting Kabayel here. He shouldn't be the one getting the opportunity. It should be Martin Bakole. Now, the only way the Bakole being leapfrogged in this situation is justifiable is if Bakole has actually turned the fight down. And I can't imagine he would have done. But if contrary information comes out in the future, then I'm happy to stand corrected. Bakole, of course, is poised to fight a final eliminator for the IBF. It looks like at the moment it's going to be Efe Ajagba because Agit Kabayel turned it down and Zhilei Zhang turned it down. It's got nothing to do with Bakole asking for too much money. That's a load of rubbish. I explained why in a previous video. If you haven't seen it, make sure you look it up on my channel. So yeah, Bakole looks like he's going to fight Ajagba. Winner becomes mandatory for the IBF heavyweight champion, which is currently Daniel Dubois. But surely, if Bakole had got the chance to fight Kabayel for the WBC interim, he would have taken that instead, because I'm sure it's going to be a lot more money, for one. And for two, interim champion is a slightly higher status than mandatory challenger. So somebody needs to explain to me how Zhilei Zhang has managed to leapfrog Martin Bakole to get this opportunity. In any event, let's talk about the actual fight that we do have. Kabayel versus Zhilei Zhang for the WBC interim heavyweight title. So Zhang, a southpaw from China, 41 years of age, 6 feet 6 inches tall, 80-inch reach, weighs the best part of 300 pounds, massive man. He's got good boxing skills. He's a tremendous puncher with both hands, arguably the biggest puncher in the heavyweight division right now. His record currently stands at 27-2-1. The first blemish on his record was back in 2021 when he had a draw with Jerry Forrest, which was a shocking result, really. Zhang had Forrest on the floor multiple times early on, but ran out of gas terribly and was actually out on his feet several times late in that fight. But since then, he's put some weight on. Maybe he felt like he was drained against Jerry Forrest, who weighed 256 that night. And his coming out party really was a year later against Filip Hrgović, who weighed 277 for that one. He dropped a 12-round UD, but many people feel like he actually deserved to get the win. I thought he looked very impressive that night. In fact, I was one of the few who did. The majority of boxing fans at the time seemed to think it was more a case of Hrgović being really bad than Zhang being any good. But I saw it differently. I thought that Zhang was far better than I expected. And in retrospect, Hrgovic's performance against Zhang was actually pretty good, wasn't it? Same way that Hrgovic's performance against Daniel Dubois doesn't look so bad in retrospect, given what Dubois did to AJ. Anyway, Zhang moved on to bigger and better things. He beat Joe Joyce twice, stopping him in 6 rounds and 3 rounds, respectively, in back-to-back fights. He then took a loss to Joseph Parker, where he came in really heavy, and again, his stamina let him down. He did drop Parker twice, but was terribly inactive in that fight. But then he redeemed himself in his next outing against Deontay Wilder, knocking him out brutally in 5 rounds. Zhang has become a bit of a favorite in Saudi Arabia. This fight with Kabayel will be his 4th time fighting out there. Yes, 4th time. The first time was when he fought Filip Hrgovic. That was in Saudi. So his opponent here for the WBC interim heavyweight title, Agit Kabayel, is a German fighter of Turkish/Kurdish lineage, 32 years of age, stands 6'3" with an 80-inch reach, which is a pretty good reach for a man of that height. In fact, he's got the same reach as Zhang. Kabayel's record currently stands at 25-0, 17 KOs. He spent most of his career fighting in obscurity, it has to be said. He had a good win over Derek Chisora back in 2017. Then he literally fell off the map for a full 6 years. He was European champion at the time, but he was fighting cream puffs. Over in Germany, nobody was paying attention, and nor should they have been. He then pops back up on a Riyadh season card last year against Arslanbek Makhmudov, and presumably he was supposed to be cannon fodder for Makhmudov. But Kabayel flipped the script. Not only did he beat the big bad Russian, but he stopped him spectacularly in 4 rounds. Makhmudov, of course, was previously unbeaten. Kabayel was subsequently invited back to Riyadh season in May this year, where he stopped Frank Sanchez, another previously unbeaten fighter, this time in 7 rounds. Although, as I've said before, Sanchez did appear to be injured in the fight. Nevertheless, Kabayel has emerged as a dark horse in the heavyweight division. Stylistically, he's a bit of an all-rounder. He can move, as he showed in the Derek Chisora fight back in the days. He's got a decent jab, he's got decent hand speed, pretty good boxing skills, and he can punch a bit too. And also, he's shown himself to be a very effective body puncher, because it's those body shots that laid waste to Makhmudov and Sanchez for the most part. And those body shots could be crucial if he can get them off against Zhilei Zhang, who, as I've already mentioned, has stamina problems. It's going to be interesting to see if Kabayel is as aggressive against Zhilei Zhang as he was against Makhmudov and Sanchez. Those guys were orthodox fighters. Zhang is a southpaw. When you're fighting a southpaw, the angles are all different. Throwing your right hand all of a sudden becomes more dangerous because it has to travel further. And if you mistime it, if you get the range wrong, you could walk onto a massive left hand from Zhilei Zhang. And of course, Zhang has also got a tremendous right hook up front. So it's a very interesting fight. I have to imagine that Agit Kabayel will be looking to emulate Joseph Parker against Zhang, because of course he outboxed Zhang over the 12-round distance, but not without tasting that Chinese power a couple times. It remains to be seen if Kabayel can take that kind of shot and come back. He took very little punishment against Makhmudov and Sanchez. If he can take Zhang's power and maintain his energy levels and his sharpness, or if he can avoid Zhang's power altogether, then this fight is very winnable for him. But it's a big if, because I have to figure that most heavyweights cannot take Zhang's power. So we will see. Both guys are on good form. If I had to lean slightly towards one of them, it would probably be Kabayel because of the fact that he's the much younger man. But those first 4 or 5 rounds are going to be perilous for him. I might see Kabayel as a 55-45 favorite. So just a slight favorite in my eyes. I think it's a fight that could very easily go either way. I think Kabayel's going to have to use his feet a lot, far more than he did against Makhmudov or Sanchez. As I said earlier, emulating what Joseph Parker did, keeping Zhang turning, using feints, in and out raiding tactics, not standing still. Because as soon as you stand still, Zhang can turn your lights out. And where it's safe to do so, Kabayel should target Zhang's body. And it may only be safe when he's all the way on the inside. So that's my take on this fight. Give me your take in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And also check out my content on Patreon. I just uploaded this video about Julian Jackson and Gerald McClellan. It's a film study where I go through actual fight footage of several of their contests, analyzing their styles and what have you, in the run-up to their historic, brutal middleweight slugfests, which of course ended in devastating fashion. 2 of the biggest punching fighters pound for pound in boxing history. If you want to access this video along with hundreds of hours worth of other exclusive boxing content, as well as our members chat, just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called the Boxing Brotherhood. There's no contract, no commitment. You can cancel at any time, just like Netflix, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper. Just download the app from the Play Store or the App Store. All the links are in the description box below. And just a quick money-saving tip for Apple users. If you purchase your Patreon subscription on the desktop site or on Android, then you'll avoid the ridiculous 30% fee that Apple charges for purchases made on the iOS app. So if you're on iPhone or iPad, save yourself some money by buying your subscription on the actual Patreon website or on Android because it's a lot cheaper. Once you've made that initial purchase, you can then use the Patreon app on your iPhone or iPad thereafter to access and enjoy your content as normal.